back to Block TV. It's time for Fireside Chat, evident by the mass amount of visual bonfires surrounding me. Now, today, a closer look on Europe. Where does it stand in the blockchain game? How receptive is it to this emerging new market and technology? And what does it take to sell it to the masses there? And to help us do that, we're very happy to be joined from Brussels in Belgium by Kristof van der Reck, chairman of Blockchain for Europe. Now, when it comes to Europe, first of all, when it comes to Kristof, pardon me, he is also a founding member, council member, and regional head Europe of NEM.io Foundation. Since he first learned about blockchain technology, he has been focusing on how blockchain can be implemented in existing businesses, not just in existing businesses, but also not just in existing businesses, but also at the opportunities that blockchain can facilitate for new business models. In his role as regional head of Europe, he and his teams are responsible for the introduction, education, and promotion of the NEM blockchain technology to all kinds of industries, governments, academia throughout Europe. And Mr. van der Reck, I want to thank you. By the way, can I call you Kristof?
Of course you can.
Lovely. I want to thank you so much for being with us today. I want to touch with you, though, to begin with, because you're really one of the people who are spearheading, the belief, I would say, in blockchain in Europe. And I want to start with you, though. How did you become infatuated, so to speak, with the technology?
Well, it was somewhere late 2013 that I got in touch with Bitcoin, and I got triggered. I got intrigued by the technology, how it was solving the double spend problem, and that's when I started to do some research, and I gradually got acquainted with more potential of blockchain, and I could very much relate to that with my background. Back in those days, I was working in aviation maintenance, and I just realized the huge potential for blockchain, and gradually got more involved. And at one point, I was completely focused on blockchain, and I'm very happy to be in this position.
No, clearly, and start me off by telling me, what is the goal of the Blockchain for Europe Association? What is your end goal?
Yeah, so there is actually quite a bit of education to be done with for regulators and policymakers, and our goal is actually to ensure that policymakers and regulators actually come up with good decisions based on input from the blockchain industry itself. So we are here to educate decision makers on what is actually needed for the blockchain industry.
And when it comes to educating decision makers, would you say that in Europe, as somebody who represents the association, you've seen in the last couple of years more receptiveness? Because there seems to be this, if we speak to people in the States, regulators, they understand that blockchain is here to stay. They say it's not reached its full potential. I'm talking about American regulators, okay? Do you think in places other than Malta and Gibraltar, in Europe, is there an understanding that the technology is not only here to stay, but needs to be pushed forward to the regulation line?
Yeah, sure. Actually, most regulators are very open to blockchain, and very open to talk to us too. And I think everybody realizes the potential of blockchain, but there's still, there's still a lot of education to be done. And but in general, I still have to come across the first person in a decision-making position that is completely against the technology. There are obviously some nuances when we talk about cryptocurrencies or things like that. But overall, people are very open. People see the potential, and especially in several positions in Europe, European Commission and other like members of the European Parliament.
Right.
A lot of these people actually see this as a potential to help make the economy flourish, because it will create a lot of opportunity.
Now, when you talk about, there is receptiveness between, amongst people at the European Commission, at the EU, how is your interaction with regulators and governments? Do they just say, yes, definitely this is the technology of the future, I'm simplifying this right now, but we're going to wait a little bit. Or are we seeing progress in that? And I'm speaking about the bulk of Europe, not, again, Malta, Gibraltar. We know those are case studies, so to speak, that where it's working and they've gone all the way with it. But they're different. Where would you say people are most receptive on the continent?
Well, so we have to realize that the landscape in Europe is pretty complex. So on one hand, you have the higher level, the European Parliament, European Commission, and then you have all the different countries who have obviously also their own decision makers. And overall, there's a pretty positive approach to blockchain. And some of these people are very well educated, and some of them have how should I say, they still have a lot of work figuring out the exact details of what this technology can do and the differences between cryptocurrency, digital assets, security tokens, things like that. And overall, I think it's more or less similar to other jurisdictions, outside of Europe. Where overall everybody is still very much in this phase where they're trying to understand the technology and how it will impact our society, basically.
How do you think it's going to impact society? When you go out there to pitch blockchain to regulators and politicians, how do you do it?
Well, so I think the great opportunity is that it allows people to regain control of their identity and their data, and do it in a very secure way. So it can solve a lot of problems that arose with the upcoming of the internet, where initially people were all interacting with each other like on a one-to-one basis, by physical contact or over the phone. Where today, it's increasingly becoming difficult to figure out whether you're even dealing with a
real person or with a bot. Definitely.
If you see these chat boxes sometimes on websites, it's difficult to figure out whether that's an actual support person or a bot. So in my opinion, that's a first step that has to be overcome, and there's a potential to do that with blockchain. And once we have reached that phase, there's just a whole world of opportunity that will open. And it will be, data today is the digital gold. That's one thing. Obviously, the whole financial aspect of blockchain is there to disrupt and revolutionize quite a bit of things. And but that's only the start. Who knows what?
And you deal mostly with basically the technology rather than its interpretation into cryptocurrencies, don't you? When it comes to representing it to Europe, right?
Well, yeah, it's obviously our focus is not on cryptocurrencies.
Exactly.
Digital assets as a whole is one of the focal points for this year, because we know that there's a need to educate policymakers about that. But it's obviously bigger than just cryptocurrencies. And as a whole, cryptocurrencies is just one of the use cases.
Right. Now, when it comes to Europe, because you've been doing this for quite a while, representing heading the blockchain for Europe Association, who would you say, if I were to ask you, and I am asking you, to quantify what countries are more receptive than others? Where do you find that it's easier to get people to understand how great it would be to be educated on this, or why it should be a joint effort on the continent as opposed to other countries?
Are you talking about countries here? Sorry,
I was talking about countries in Europe.
In Europe, well, obviously there's a lot of smaller countries that really are trying to take the lead, and countries like, well, you already mentioned Malta, but there's Gibraltar, there's Estonia, Lithuania, Luxembourg. There's the whole set of small countries that are taking a very proactive approach, because they see it as an opportunity, and them being small, they know they're more agile and they can move faster.
And that's exactly, but what about the bigger ones? I mean, this obviously one can say that unless it gets to mass adoption, you need countries like France, you need Germany, right? You need, I was about to say, right?
Belgium. France is very very positive on blockchain. Belgium, well, is how should I say, is probably a little bit behind, but there's also a lot of from the banking industry. There's some initiatives going on. Overall, I think there's a very positive vibe around blockchain, but obviously there's still a long road before we can actually talk about mainstream adoption, like I guess everywhere in the world.
Where do you think that mass adoption will come from?
Where?
Yeah, what do you think? I'm asking you to theorize with me.
Well, it'll gradually start to surface on different aspects, and there's when we talk about blockchain adoption, there's so many different kind of blockchain adoptions, right? There's private chain adoption, there's public chain adoption. I personally believe that there's a lot of adoption is going to happen on cross chain and hybrid applications, and it'll I think 2019 will be we will see a breakthrough, or we will start to see a breakthrough in security tokens, which in my opinion will create another hype, for the
security.
financial.
So you think 2019 is the year of the security tokens, in a way?
Yeah, well, obviously it'll take some time before it really starts to. I think it will surface somewhere this year. We already see some initiatives popping up and like regulatory sandboxes in different countries throughout Europe.
Right.
And everybody's in this exploration phase. Sooner or later, there will be some outcome of that.
Okay, if I'm asking you to dream, before we wrap this up, the year right now is 2019. Let's take a time travel capsule, you and I, and we move up to 2025. Where do you see Europe in the blockchain sphere in 2025?
Well, hopefully by then there will be a lot of clarity, because that's one of the key inhibitors at this point in time, I guess. A lot of businesses and entrepreneurs, they don't have the regulatory clarity on specific blockchain implementation. By that time, I expect there will be clarity, regulation will be put in place, and I hope that by that time there will be a good mass adoption on different the entire scope of different blockchain applications, and that our association itself will have grown in membership. We're currently looking at increasing the membership, and that we can actually have a meaningful impact on how regulation is adapted to in such a way that it fits what the blockchain industry actually needs to make this innovation happen.
You think there'll be an EU, a European Union regulation in place by then, by 2025?
Well, yeah, I expect some regulation to be in place,
but not a whole other zone. Okay, look, I think that in that respect, you're a lot more optimistic than some people on the other side of the pond, so to speak, from the European continent. But Kristof, I want to thank you so much for being with us today. As we said, this is a closer look at where Europe stands on accepting, educating, regulating blockchain. Thank you for being with us from Brussels today. And of course, that was it for us for now. Fireside Chat. Of course, do not forget to check us out. Block TV and every social network you have. Facebook, Twitter, Telegram, whatnot. And we'll be right back.